I never should have come to Kamchatka. The region, wild and remote, had fascinated me for years. Towering volcanoes, untamed forests, and the freezing Pacific. It was the perfect place for an adventure. As a travel photographer, I thrived in these isolated landscapes. But I didn't come for the land this time. I came for the sea. The locals warned me. They always do. In every remote place I've traveled, there are legends passed down like a script from parent to child. This time, it was about the Sea of Okhotsk, a cold, dark expanse that stretches like a graveyard off the Kamchatkan coast. They call it Baidarka, and they say it whispers. My host, Galina, an elderly woman with skin as weathered as driftwood, was the first to tell me about it. She warned me not to go near the sea after sundown, especially not alone. The sea listens, she said, her voice gravelly, and it remembers. It takes what it lost. I dismissed it as superstition, just like the other stories I'd heard. Ghosts of drowned sailors, creatures lurking beneath the ice. It was all typical folklore. But I couldn't shake a feeling, something that clung to me since I arrived, a quiet sense of unease. I didn't plan on going to the shore that night. The evening was falling quickly, with a bone-chilling wind sweeping across the tundra. The land was silent, and there were no sounds of birds or animals, just the howling of the wind. I was staying in a cabin by myself, having left the village behind after snapping some photos of the reindeer herders and the surrounding wilderness. The ocean, vast and ominous, was only a mile away. But as I sat by the fire, an odd sensation began to grow inside me. It was like a pull, an invisible hand tugging at my insides, whispering that I needed to go. The sea, it said, the sea is waiting. I tried to ignore it, but the whispers grew louder in my head. I grabbed my camera and flashlight, convincing myself that it was just curiosity. I was an adventurer, after all. What was the harm in visiting the shore for a few photos? The path to the coast was more of a rugged trail, barely visible under the snow that had started to fall. The cold air bit into my face as I trudged forward, the wind carrying a faint sound. At first I thought it was the ocean's roar, but as I drew nearer, the noise became clearer. A whisper. My heart quickened. Galina's words echoed in my mind, but I shook them off. Just the wind, I told myself. Nothing more. When I finally reached the shore, the sea was pitch black, its waves churning under a moonless sky. The only sound was the water lapping against the rocky shore, and the whispers. They were closer now, like they were coming from just beyond the water's edge. I raised my camera, focusing on the inky horizon. As I snapped a photo, the whispers stopped. The silence that followed was heavy, unnatural. I strained my ears, expecting the wind to pick up again, but there was nothing. Not a breath of air, not a sound from the waves. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A shadowy figure stood in the surf, barely visible in the dim light. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a man, or at least it had been. His clothes were torn, hanging like rags from his skeletal frame. His skin was pale, almost translucent, with a bluish tint that reminded me of the drowned bodies I had once seen in a cold morgue. He stepped forward, the water barely making a sound as it swirled around his feet. My flashlight flickered as I pointed it toward him, but the beam seemed to die before it reached him, swallowed by the thick darkness. The figure stopped at the water's edge, just a few feet from me. His face was gaunt, hollow, with eyes that were too deep to see clearly, and yet I knew he was looking at me, looking through me. The whispers returned, louder now, a chorus of voices rising from the sea. "They never leave," the figure rasped, his voice mingling with the wind. "They took me. They'll take you too." I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. But as I turned to run, the ground gave way beneath my feet, sending me sprawling onto the rocky beach. The camera slipped from my hand, landing in the icy water. When I scrambled to my feet, the figure was gone. But the whispers remained, surrounding me, growing louder and more insistent. They weren't just whispers anymore. They were calling my name. I ran. I don't remember how I made it back to the cabin, but I did. I slammed the door shut behind me, locking myself inside. The whispers had stopped, but I knew they hadn't really gone away. Now as I sit here, I hear them again, faint but growing louder with each passing minute. The sea is calling, and soon I fear I won't be able to resist its pull. It remembers, it never forgets. And neither will I. I can still hear them. The whispers claw at the edges of my mind, soft but unrelenting. No matter how loud I make the fire crackle in the hearth, or how hard I try to distract myself by writing this account, they remain, a constant presence just beyond my reach. The sea wants me back. I tried to call for help earlier, but there's no signal out here. My radio is dead, and the power flickers intermittently. It's as if everything is conspiring to leave me isolated, alone with the memory of the figure I saw on the shore. The whispers grow louder when the wind howls, like they're riding the gusts that press against the windows. I've started to notice patterns in their cadence, as if they're forming words I don't want to understand. There's a language in the sea, an ancient one. It's trying to communicate with me. I've been pacing the cabin for hours, checking the locks repeatedly, but I know that doors won't stop it. Whatever I encountered out there was not of this world. It had been human once, I'm sure of it. A sailor perhaps, or a fisherman lost to the merciless tides. But the sea twisted him into something else, something hungry, and now it wants me too. It's dark outside, and I'm terrified to look out the window. I'm certain if I do, I'll see him standing there, waiting for me at the edge of the trees. The pull is stronger now. I feel it like a tide rising inside me, dragging me closer to the shore with every passing second. My body is tense, every muscle coiled as if preparing for a fight. But deep down, I know there's no fighting this. There's a knock at the door. It's soft at first, but then it comes again, louder, more insistent. I freeze, heart hammering in my chest. No one should be out here. No one could be out here. Not at this hour, in this weather. The knock comes again, and then a voice. "Let me in." It's the same voice I heard on the beach, a rasping, hollow sound, almost drowned by the wind outside. But it's him. I know it's him. The man from the shore. "They took me," he says, his voice muffled through the wood of the door. "You're next." My hand hovers over the doorknob. I don't want to open it. I can't open it. But the whispers, they're so loud now, deafening. My thoughts are unraveling, slipping away like sand through my fingers. The pull is unbearable, stronger than before. "They'll take you too," the voice says again, closer now, right at the door. I back away trembling, but then something catches my eye. My camera, wet from the sea, lies on the floor where I dropped it earlier. I don't know why, but I pick it up, cradling it like a lifeline. Maybe there's proof, something in the pictures I took before it all went wrong. My hands are shaking as I turn it on, scrolling through the images. The last one stops me cold. It's not just the man I saw on the beach. There are others. Dozens of figures emerging from the black waves behind him. Their faces are gaunt, hollow, and twisted with a deep, inhuman hunger. Their eyes are empty sockets, staring directly at me through the lens. And their mouths, God, their mouths are wide open, screaming soundlessly, as if trapped between life and death. I drop the camera, stumbling backward. The whispers become a roar, filling my head, my very soul. They're inside me now, echoing through my bones, pulling me closer to the door. I can't fight it anymore. The door creaks open, though I don't remember unlocking it. Cold air rushes in, bringing with it the scent of salt and decay. He's standing there, the man from the shore, his skeletal frame illuminated by the flickering firelight. Behind him, in the distance, I can see the other figures, waiting. Their hollow eyes fix on me, drawing me toward them, toward the sea. I take a step forward, and then another. My body moves on its own, like a puppet on strings, compelled by something far older and darker than I could ever understand. The whispers are all I can hear now. And the last thing I remember before the darkness swallows me whole is the sound of the sea, rising in the distance, calling me home. The sea never forgets. And neither will I. Not where I'm going.